Storytime about why you should never get romantically involved with someone that you work with. So a little background information, I was working at one of the largest discount retail stores in the US, and about a couple months into me working there, my manager and I took a liking to each other. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm underage and he's a full-grown adult. But that's besides the point. Him and I, we started sneaking around a lot together, and about a month after him and I were screwing around with each other, he wanted to end things. Which I was like, alright, sure, whatever. But clearly he didn't mean it because we were still doing the same stuff that we were doing before he, quote, ended things with me. Anyways, so a random day at work, I don't know what the hell crawled up his ass, but he just snapped at me the one day. He starts threatening to write me up, and he started talking down to me any chance that he got. Like, how are you gonna talk down to me when you literally were just hanging out with me last week? Like, you're a full-grown man. Act like it, please. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why you should never get romantically involved with someone that you work with. So like I said, he just started acting really weird towards me. Like, he just woke up one day and decided that he hated me. He starts threatening to write me up, and then he starts talking down to me any chance that he got. And I'm not going to take that from a grown man who's been hanging out with a teenager. So I end up having to meet with the head of HR, and they told me they had to let me go because I'm, quote, hostile, disrespectful, and this, that, and the next. Obviously, I knew that he went to HR because they didn't just pull this shit out of their ass. So I texted him the same day and I told him that I was going to call corporate and let them know everything that had been going on between him and I. I don't think that he believed me, but I sent in a report about the whole situation. And of course, whenever the head of HR confronted him about it, he denied everything. So I called corporate again and I sent them all the proof that this actually happened. And currently, I'm still waiting for him to get fired because there is no way in hell that you're going to get me fired and have no consequences whatsoever. Storytime. Everybody's saying that I cheated on my ex-boyfriend, but I want your guys' opinion. So a little background information. I was a college student, and I had been with this guy who we're going to call Jacob for about 6 months. Towards the end of his and I's relationship, stuff just started to get really boring, and every day I would get the ick from him. Now, at this time also, I had gotten a new job. While I was working, I had met this guy who we're going to call Tim. Since I was a college student, I decided to start working more, so Tim and I would see each other literally every day. Him and I really hit it off, like straight away. Not to mention, him and I had a lot of things in common, his sense of humor was great. Well, the one night before work got out, Tim asked for my number, and I said yes. However, since I was still with Jacob, I decided that I was going to break up with him before I texted Tim. So, I broke up with him. Fast forward to now, Tim and I are in a super good relationship. But now everyone's saying that I cheated on Jacob. What do you guys think? Storytime about how I got my ex-toxic best friend jumped. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And like any of these toxic best friend story times, she was super jealous of me for literally no reason. She would literally try to be better than me in everything. Like when I did a sport or a club, she would join immediately right after. And it wasn't oh, I'm going to join my best friend. No, it was, I'm going to join so that way I can show her that I'm better than her. For example, in 6th grade, I was captain on the volleyball team, and she decided that she was going to try out her sophomore year. She played it off as if she just wanted to try it out, but then I got announced captain, and she was pissed off when she heard that. She literally blocked me on everything. And she came from a super wealthy family, so she was used to getting whatever she wanted. And my whole friend group would literally tell me, you need to stop being friends with her. She's toxic. She's this, she's that. The only thing that stopped me from being friends with her was the blackmail. Like for part 2 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, the only thing that was stopping me from not being her friend was the blackmail that she had. Every time that I pissed her off, or even just randomly, she would be like, oh, I'm going to send this out. I'm going to expose you. She was just overall a shitty friend. So I had an exposing account on Instagram where I would expose people in my class. It got banned, but she DM'd the account the blackmail. Little did she know it was literally me who was running it. Obviously, I didn't post it, but I showed one of my friends, and we kind of made a plan to get rid of the blackmail. So my birthday was coming up, and I was going to Disney, and my mom said that I could invite 2 friends. Originally, I wasn't going to invite Tessa, but since I had this plan, I invited her and one of my other friends. On the 3rd night, my friend and I decided to take our plan into action. Tessa was sleeping, so I went on her phone, and I went and deleted all the pictures. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, on the third night, she was sleeping, so we went on her phone. I deleted all of the blackmail that she had on me, and I even went a step further and screenshotted all of the nudes that she was sending back and forth with older guys, and these guys were way older than her, like way older. And I sent them to myself and deleted the text off of her phone. Fast forward, we drop her off at her house. I stay over my friend's house and we decide that we're going to post everything to my exposing page. And we also came up with a really good idea. Why not send this to Tessa's parents? So we sent them to her parents. And guys, when I tell you this exposing page had so many people on it, it really did. Somebody was like, OMG, like, please send a face reveal. Like, I won't tell anybody. So what did I do? I sent a picture of Tessa, and that person posted it to their Snapchat story. Fast forward to the first day of school. We're outside for gym class, and 3 girls beat her ass. Storytime about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information. I was 16, and it was during the summertime. And I was super excited because I had just got my license. But my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok, and she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target, and when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in, and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around, and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone, and this woman came up to me. She was like, oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is. So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her? And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, oh, part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter. And I was like, I'm going to go tell a Target employee. And she was like, no, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place. And she was like, will you help me check the parking lot? Because I don't know if she left. She was like, I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car? And she was like, no, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around? And I said, yeah, because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, I think someone's under my car. And she was like, what? No, it's probably just the shadow. And I'm like, no, there's someone under my car. So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me. Storytime about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information. I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So of course I would go pick her up and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house, like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car and I let her drive that night. And she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating. And I didn't think anything of it until she called him and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time, and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that. Because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, she posted stuff online about my mental health, and then her and we ended up fighting at school, and her mom decided to press charges. But then I ended up showing the cops everything that she had said to me online and all the bullying that she was doing, and how she would literally blackmail me into being friends with her. And this made Jenna and Jenna's mom super unhappy, so they ended up filing a false report about me to the police, saying that I have illegal stuff in my house, and I do this, and I do that, and I plan on unaliving my mom. Like, what the fuck? So in the middle of the night, my whole family and I are woken up by this loud banging on our front door. So my mom, hurry up, go open the door, and they're saying that they have a warrant, and come to find out, the only thing that they could find were a bunch of empty vapes, which my mom was not happy about. And yeah, my mom and I's relationship is super rocky sometimes, but I would never try to unalive her. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town, and that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early, and he went to this meeting, and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip, so we decided to start drinking early, and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just going to meet us at the airport like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend proposed to another girl right in front of me. I know this is late, but better late than never. So like I said, we left, I went back to her house, and my boyfriend has the audacity to text me, I'll just meet you guys at the airport. So my best friend's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go beat him up? Of course I said no, so I told her and her boyfriend to just go to the airport while I figured out what I was going to do, and to not say a word. Which was hard for my best friend because she was confrontational as fuck. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was sick and I just wasn't going to go to the Bahamas with them, when in reality I was packing up our whole house, leaving him with only his clothes and his shoes. So I put all the stuff in storage and I just decided to move back to my mom's house. And yes, this was in a span of a few days. So the whole time that he was gone, I was acting like everything was okay. On the last day of the trip, I sent him a text saying that I knew about everything. And I said I never wanted to hear from him again and I never wanted him to see the kids again. And he took that quite literally. I never got a text back. Well, 4 months after all this happened, I soon find out that he got a new house in North Carolina with his new wife and they have a daughter on the way. Story time. Would you call this cheating? So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school, and I was dating this guy who we're gonna call Tom, right? When we started dating, everything was super good. But a little bit into our relationship, I started to get the ick. Anything and everything he would do would literally irritate the hell out of me. So at that point, I told him that we should take a break. So we did. Well, while we were on this little break, I decided to go out with my cousin the one night. And she had brought this guy who she was talking to at the time. We're gonna call him Jake. Jake and I had the same classes in school, but we never really talked to each other. Well, I started to get to know him throughout the night, and I realized we had a lot in common. I felt like he was flirting with me, so I decided to flirt with him. When we got home, I had told her how much I really liked Jake. We ended up FaceTiming and falling asleep on the phone together. We all hung out again the next day, and I invited him back to my house. Like for part 2. Would you consider this cheating? Part 2. So like I said, we all decided to hang out again the next day. It was really cold out, so I invited everybody back to my house. And when we got back to my house, we were watching horror films. And I was cuddling next to Jake on the couch. And listen, I wanted to kiss him really bad, but Tom and I had just gotten done with our so-called break. So I decided to be loyal and not do that. Well, a few days after Jake and I talking, I realized that I wanted to be with him and not Tom. So I decided to end things with Tom, and now Jake and I have been together for 1 year and 2 months, and we couldn't be happier. But every time that we bring up Tom, Jake always tells me that I cheated on him. Would you consider what I did cheating? Story time. I was the toxic best friend. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And at the beginning of the year, I met this girl who we're going to call Riley. Riley and I hit it off straight away. Like a week after knowing each other, she knew everything about me and I knew everything about her. Well, then she tells me about this guy that she's talking to, who we're going to call Jay. She said that they would hook up sometimes and he would text her sometimes. But she said that I couldn't tell anybody because he said that it had to be a secret. So I tried telling her that he sounded like a fuckboy, but she decided she was going to do whatever she wanted. And I was like, okay. So fast forward to the end of the year, he adds me on Snapchat. Okay, don't get me wrong. He was really hot, but I had my own thing going on. So I really didn't pay that much attention to him. And I thought he maybe added me on Snapchat to be like, oh my God, I really like your best friend. And then I also was caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I tell my best friend that the guy that she likes just added me on Snapchat? Or do I lie to her? Well, I was going to tell her until I got a Snapchat from him, like for part 2. Storytime about my weird cellmate. So a little background information. I was 17 years old and a junior in high school. Yes, I was 17 and I was being charged as an adult. So I was in with a bunch of women. Well, one night after dinner, my cellmates and I are watching true crime shows. Because that's what you do when you're in jail. Watch true crime and CSI and all that shit. Anyway, so we're watching our shows and we see a new girl come in. She's got her blanket packed and we're all being warm and welcoming. And immediately, all of us could sense that something was off with this chick. Immediately, she starts going off about how she has a problem with the TV show we're watching. She did not like the fact that we were watching crime shows. She was like, oh my gosh, you guys really need to turn this off like right now. Low-key thought I was gonna see her on there or some shit. But yeah, she was just being super paranoid and we're sitting there like, girl, we have 10 channels. 7 of them are going to be true crime and 2 of them are the news. Oh, and the other channel was black and white movies and nobody wanted to watch that shit. So then I asked her if she unalived someone, like for part 2 about my weird cellmate. So like I said, I asked her if she unalived someone before because only somebody who unalived somebody would be triggered over us watching true crime, but she completely ignores me. So the first night, something happened with this girl. It was low-key, very, very weird. Me and my other cellmates were like, this girl's weird as hell. Why is she here? And then the next day was the icing on the cake. So it was cleaning day, and we're all cleaning our stuff. And this girl just starts cleaning the weirdest things, like the inside of trash cans and shit that didn't need to be cleaned. And then it started getting creepy. Not weird, creepy. She put a paper towel over the drains because the voices were too loud. And then she would walk around the pod talking about death and carnage. And if you don't know what carnage means, it pretty much just means unaliving a lot of people. So this was super bad vibes, obviously. Now, when you're in jail, of course people are going to ask what you're doing time for. And if you don't say, you're going to come off as sketchy. So we're asking this girl, hey, what are you in for? And she would not give us a straight answer. Well, while she was at a visit, we went through her things, like for part 3 about my weird cellmate. So like I said, we asked her what she was in for and she didn't answer, so we found that weird as heck. So then she went for a visit and we searched through her stuff and found her paperwork. We found out that she was in because she attempted to unalive her husband, in which he got a restraining order. So at this point, we're like, this is weird as hell and she needs to go. Like, she gotta go. So now the entire pod comes together, and every single one of us wrote a letter pleading the staff to get this crazy you-know-what out of our pod. We all folded them up into little paper kites, and we sent them to the guards. We were ringing the doorbell like crazy, and we told them what happened, and no questions asked, she was gone. Storytime about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So a little background information, I was 18 and a senior in high school, and in the middle of the school year, I had a new student in my 4th period class, who we're going to call Jose, and he was 17 years old and in 11th grade. Now, he wasn't technically new because I'd seen him around school and everything like that, but up until this point, neither of us knew that each other existed. So he gets introduced to the class, blah, blah, blah. He sits in the very back of the room, and I knew that this man was going to be my boyfriend. So when I got home that day, I was texting my friend about him. Thankfully, she gave me his Snapchat. Fast forward, we're talking, and elevators get brought up. Now, in my school, you were not allowed to use the elevators unless you're injured or for some other reason. Well, he was talking about how he always used the elevators and nobody really cared. So I meet him at the elevator the next day and blah, blah, blah. We start flirting. And this led to him and I being super close. Like, we would FaceTime every day. We would always sit together at lunch, in class. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So like I said, every day after that, him and I were pretty much inseparable. We would FaceTime literally 24/7. We would always sit together during lunch, during class. Well, the one day I'm sitting in my homeroom and he comes in and he asked me to be his girlfriend. Of course I said yes. So fast forward to Halloween, my family was handing out candy and he was going trick-or-treating with his family because he had younger siblings. And this is where our families were supposed to meet, but he didn't end up coming to my neighborhood, which I was super happy about. Well, then fast forward to my birthday. Our families were supposed to meet again, but it didn't end up happening again. And I wasn't really sure if this was the reason why things got weird between him and I. The one night I was over at my friend's house and Jose's on FaceTime with me. And I was talking about how I could pick him up and him and I could hang out. And he literally just didn't even say anything. So I was like, okay, is that a no? So then he was like, I don't know, I might be busy, blah, 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 like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend was hiding his 2-year relationship from me. So like I said, him and I are on FaceTime, I'm asking him if he wants to hang out, and he's being super weird about it, being super standoffish. Well, fast forward a little bit, he seemed like he wasn't interested in me anymore, and it really hurt my feelings, obviously. So he didn't talk to me the rest of the day, and then he texted me the next day. And he was telling me how different we are and how we barely have anything in common and how we rushed into things. Pretty much a bunch of shitty excuses as to why he thinks that we should break up. Well, after that, him and I don't speak for a few days, and then I had a fake account on Instagram. And after our breakup, I viewed his story the one day. So then I look at his Instagram story, he posted a picture of another girl with a heart. And then I found her account and she had pictures of them dating back from like 2 years ago. Now, still to this day, I don't know if he was cheating on her or if they were on a break or whatever, but I also thought that it was weird that they were dating because she was 19 and he was 17.